My fiancé and I rent a house together, and we live alone. About 2 years ago, my fiancé and I were lying in bed. It was actually pretty late in the morning, at about 11 or so. I'd been awake for about 10 or 15 minutes, and my fiancé was just waking up. We lied there, talking softly about whether or not we should get up yet, or try to go back to sleep for a bit. He had the first half of the day off of work, and it might be nice to catch up on sleep since we'd had a busy couple of days. He was lying on his back, staring up at the ceiling, and I was on my right side, facing him, with my hand on his chest while we talked. In that position, I had my back to our bedroom door, which was maybe 8 or 9 feet away from the bed behind me. Suddenly, an odd feeling came over the room. Seriously, it felt like the air in the room was suddenly either sucked out or made very, very heavy. It almost felt like I was underwater, or gravity changed, and the room seemed to almost feel like it was tilting to the side. It felt like the air in the room was pressing down on top of my body, while at the same time slowing down time and making me dizzy and loopy. My ears were popping. Well, I thought it was just me feeling this, and for a moment I wondered if I was having a blood pressure drop. I get those sometimes, though it still wasn't quite what it felt like. He asked me like he couldn't get out the words without struggling. "Do you feel that too? What's happening?" And that was when I knew something odd and scary was going on, because he was feeling the exact same thing. I tried to speak, but my speech actually came out kind of slurred, and I had to force the words out of my mouth to say I couldn't move as well. I saw him trying to turn over onto his side and trying to raise his arm up. I tried to raise my arm up too and found that I couldn't. Again, it was like being underwater and in an intensely pressurized room. I started trying to push myself up to see if I could sit up. I couldn't do it. It was just too heavy. Then we both heard the doorknob of our bedroom door turning. It was turning over and over again, almost like someone was trying to come in, but they weren't jiggling it or trying to open the door. It was actually turning in a rhythm. It was turning back and forth in a rhythm at about the same tempo as a metronome. It was very deliberate, like a beat to a song. We were both terrified, and we froze. The first thought in my mind was that someone had broken in, though I couldn't figure out why they would turn the doorknob back and forth in a deliberate rhythm, especially because our bedroom door had no lock on it. They could just open it and walk right in. That weird, heavy gravity feeling that was holding us down still would not allow us to move. I was still trying to, and I could feel my fiancé still trying as well. All I was able to do was turn my head very slowly and look over my shoulder at the doorknob and watch it turning. I could see it. Then we both heard it. There were voices singing. What sounded like a pair of young girls started singing a song that I could not make out most of the lyrics to. The only clear lyrics that I could make out was the very last word at the end of the sentence, dancing. So let me clarify what I'm trying to describe, because it's hard to do it justice. These 2 young girls' voices were singing an almost nursery rhyme-type song outside our bedroom door while turning our bedroom doorknob back and forth. The doorknob would turn with each word they sang, keeping perfect rhythm. I couldn't make out nearly any of the other words of this song they were singing, except for the word dancing at the very end of each stanza. To add to our terror, they were singing it in a way that was kind of playful and taunting. It's kind of like what 2 little girls would do if they were teasing an older sibling, or their mum or dad. Then they would come up to a room they're in, shaking the doorknob and singing at them, just to tease. The song almost sounded made up, the way kids sometimes sing little made-up songs to be silly or playful. It also sounded like they were laughing or trying not to giggle while doing it. I'm watching the doorknob turn as these voices sing at us. Near the end of the song, I turn my head in slow motion back to my fiancé. I want to see if he's seeing and hearing the same thing I am, and I can now see has finally managed to turn his head. He was watching the doorknob too, and I'll never forget the look of fear on his face. His eyes were as big as dinner plates. I've never seen him that shocked or that scared. His face was just white. And finally, the song ended. It was short, just 2 stanzas. Then just as soon as it started, the doorknob just stopped turning on the very last word of the song, dancing. All at once, that heavy, dizzying weight that had been holding us down and making it so hard to move and breathe just lifted. It just went away just like that. Suddenly, we could move again, and the air and gravity felt normal. It seriously was all over, from start to finish, in about 20 seconds. It felt like a very long time, though. My fiancé sat up and goes, "What the hell just happened?" He jumped over me and out of bed, raced to the door and yanked it open. Nothing was there. We don't have a hallway. It's a small house, and our bedroom door opens right up into the living room. He just looked out into it and told me nobody was there. I got up and ran over to him and looked for myself. The house was empty, and our 2 cats were both backed up against the far wall of the living room, hissing and growling. They'd either heard it too, or even seen what did it. We felt something weird, though. There was this trail of heat from the spot right in front of our bedroom door, all the way through the living room, through the dining room, and out to the kitchen door. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just a trail of heat. The air just felt hot and oily, and you could almost see a haze, like fog, trailing from our bedroom door, through the house, and to the kitchen door. We checked both the front door and the kitchen door. Both were locked. We both sat back down on the bed, and we were just shaking. We kept asking each other if that really happened, and whether we experienced the same thing. We both felt the air pressure holding us down in bed and making us move in slow motion, and we both heard and saw the bedroom doorknob moving back and forth in rhythm. And then, we both heard the 2 little girls singing that song. So I know it wasn't a hallucination or anything. The only difference was that my fiancé understood a couple more of the lyrics of what they were singing, though not many. He said it sounded something like, "And we come in a-dancing," or "And we go a-dancing." It was just so unsettling and spooky. And to be honest, the way the girls' voices sounded, they didn't sound mean or creepy. They seriously sounded like 2 real little girls who were just having fun and teasing us. It didn't feel malevolent or anything, but it still creeped us out, just that it happened, though. We were both shaken up for the rest of the day, and I begged him not to leave for work that afternoon, but he had to. The whole time he was at work, I kept every light in the house on, along with both the TVs in the living room and our bedroom. It's never happened again, but it still creeps us both out just talking about it. I've moved to Weed, California for work. It's a small town next to Mount Shasta. I'm an avid hiker and love exploring, so, naturally, I decided to go hike the mountain on one of my days off. I don't entirely remember why, but I decided to drive my car very deep into the forest surrounding the base of the mountain. I went in as far as the dirt road would allow me. It was around 3 in the afternoon with a clear sky, so I was very confident and enjoying the scenery as I got out of my car and started my hike heading closer to the mountain. At first, it was your regular everyday hike. There were lots of birds and squirrels around. There's that pleasant smell of nature that fills your lungs as you walk across the terrain. It wasn't until I reached a small dried-up river that I noticed something was off. As I stopped to look at the dried-up river and take pictures, I noticed that it was strangely very quiet. No birds were chirping, and there were no signs of squirrels or other animals. Even the sound of the wind you hear when you're on a mountain seemed to be completely gone. At the time, I thought it was just an odd coincidence, and started walking up alongside the river. But as I kept walking, and being able to only hear my own footsteps, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It's not the kind of feeling that makes you think someone is outside your window watching you. It's the kind of feeling that makes you feel multiple people or things are observing your every movement. It's as if they are studying you. I've never had that kind of feeling in my life, but what happened after made me completely forget about that feeling. I suddenly started to hear something out of nowhere that sounded like angelic humming. I thought it was maybe a song with no lyrics. At the same time, it also sounded strangely electric, like the sound telephone lines make. It wasn't very loud, but it was enough to make me look in the direction it was coming from. I looked to the other side of the dried-up river that had multiple trees and other foliage to see someone or something looking straight at me. It almost looked like a ghost with it looking completely white. But I swear this thing was very clearly there. It almost looked like it was wearing a robe, but I couldn't see any feet, hands, or even a face. I saw it had an oval head with no features. However, I could feel it looking straight at me, almost as if it was trying to remember my every detail. Even from afar away, I could tell that its entire body had a very weird texture, almost like porcelain, but if porcelain was a silky fabric, it was very obviously not human. I was very understandably in complete shock and terror. I was frozen in place and kind of scared. We both looked at each other for what felt like forever, but it was most likely around 20 to 30 seconds. I very, very slowly started walking backwards. I don't think I took more than 2 steps when it tilted its head as if it was curious or even surprised at what I was doing. All the while I could still hear that electric, angelic humming. I swear it got a little louder when I took those steps back. Then I turned my head to look behind me to make sure the way was clear so I could run. At that moment, the song suddenly stopped. It was very abrupt. This shocked me, and when I turned back to look at the thing, it was gone. There was no sign of it anywhere. As soon as I saw that it disappeared, I ran as fast as I could, following the path I took back. Even after it had disappeared, and while I was running, I could still feel like I was being watched from all sides. I almost tripped a few times in how fast I was going. When I got to my car, the sounds of animals and the mountain wind suddenly came back. I was still scared out of my mind and drove as fast as I could away from the mountain. I've never had anything paranormal happen to me in the past, and I've honestly always been very skeptical of stuff like that. But this experience has left me questioning a lot of things. I don't think I want to go back on that mountain. I've even had a nightmare about the experience. Was it a ghost? I'm not even sure what I saw or what to call it. I am pretty sure I'm actually the only person in my family who does not have a personal ghost story. I find my family to be very intelligent people who would not make these things up, but it's also hard to imagine something that you yourself have never experienced. My mother lived in a haunted house when she was very young. They feel that there is more than one spirit in the house. Apparently, the house had a colored history. Once, my mother woke up in the middle of the night and a dark figure was messing with the items on her bedside table. She assumed it was my grandmother and asked her what she was doing. A voice in her head told her to go back to sleep, and she did. The next morning, she asked her mother what she had been doing in her room that night, and my grandmother confirmed that it was not her in there. They considered their parents' room, I believe, to be the most haunted. Once my mother and uncle were, I guess, having some sort of endurance contest and were hiding under the bed covers, they could hear something playing with the vacuum cleaner. My mum just bolted, leaving my uncle to suffer alone. He finally springs out of the bed and runs and literally dives off the top of a rather steep stairway and then proceeds to float to the bottom of the stairs where my grandpa just happens to be waiting with open arms. They all swear there is no way he would have been able to jump all those steps. Another time, my mom was kind of a tomboy and was outside getting beat up by some neighborhood boys. She looked up at her house and could see what she believed was my grandpa just sitting in his study. He was just there watching through the window, and she couldn't figure out why he wasn't helping her. When she finally got inside and confronted him, he swore up and down that he hadn't been in his study all day long. Apparently, they had babysitters who would run out of the house in the middle of the night because of scary things that happened. In later years, when I was about 10 or so, my mom worked at a local restaurant after closing. She was assigned to clean the place up. It was always rumored that the place was haunted, and she had so many scary experiences that she eventually wouldn't even go alone. So, my stepfather started going with her and experienced some of the craziness himself. She would put up all the chairs on the tables, turn around briefly, and turn back, and they would all be back down again. But apparently, the ghost's favorite game, was running in and out of the large metal door to the kitchen. One night, it kept happening over and over again until, finally, my stepfather put a tall metal bread rack in front of the door. A few moments later, they heard a loud bang and went to check. Something had run into the door so hard that it left a dent from the door hitting the bread rack on the other side. The only other one I can think of comes from my older sister. She lived alone in an old apartment complex, also rumored by many to be haunted. She says that she was washing her face in the sink one night and looked into the mirror to see another face behind her. She said that she was calm and told them that she didn't mind sharing the space as long as they left her alone and didn't try and scare her, or something like that. Please drop a like and subscribe to Eerie Echoes for more horror stories. As always, thank you for watching.